Hey everybody, how we all doing? I'm one more time, and we're here with another edition of the Game Boy-A-Thon, a series where we play every Game Boy game released in North America and have something a little interesting to talk about with each of them. I hope everything is going well for y'all today, and you're all having a good Thursday today as we get ready to play 4 very hot games. I'm pretty excited about today. We're actually be playing our first fighting game, our first Capcom game, and I think that's about it for first, but there's also 2 other games here that are also going to be pretty darn good. So, oh, actually, you know what? There is one other first. The first good Kid Icarus game is also going to be played, and some might argue the only good Kid Icarus game. I've never played Uprising, so I couldn't say. But yeah, very excited to kind of jump in here and check these out with y'all, and kind of see if the Game Boy can't do some cool stuff with the fighting game genre. So speaking of, our first game is going to be Samurai Showdown. So let's go ahead and get this loaded up, and we'll jump on in there and check it out. Yes, the Game Boy boot sound is always the best. So yes, this is Samurai Showdown, developed by Takara, and also published by Takara. Released in 1994, based upon the SNK game of the same name. Already just starting off, it's, there's just a really good presentation that's associated with this, as you can tell. They more or less have the opening from the actual arcade game, albeit limited and kind of crunched down in order to work on the Game Boy. And honestly, it gives you a really good appreciation for what they're going for. Really, really strong start. So pretty normal slate of options. 1 second. Okay, interesting. I actually had to check. You can't move left. You can only press right to scroll through the options. That's quite interesting. I wonder if that is an emulation issue. But as you can see, you can do multiplayer in this. This is a link cable game, or this is actually a game, if you notice on the box art, it actually has compatibility with the Super Game Boy and with some special features. And what those special features entail includes not only some limited coloration and whatnot of the sprites, but also allows you to play 2-player multiplayer using 2 controllers and 1 cartridge using the Super Game Boy. We're going to talk about the Super Game Boy at some point during the stream. I have a collection of games that we're going to be using to demonstrate the enhancing features of the Super Game Boy. Literally a cartridge that contains the Game Boy architecture that you just plug into the system and enhances your Game Boy games. Also, this game does not wait long in order to jump into the demo screen if you wait. So very limited options. You can see you can easy, normal, hard. You can select how much time you have. We'll leave everything as it is. And let's jump on in here. So all characters are represented here in Samurai Showdown, which is actually kind of notable. Some of the ports of Samurai Showdown didn't have all the characters. So I'm a very basic person, so we're going to go with Hamamaru, or Hawamaru, I believe is how you pronounce it. And we'll jump on in here and start playing a little bit. Hawamaru, there we go, I was close. But yeah, full story mode, essentially, for each of the characters, complete with cutscenes. Like, just a really impressive package in general. Alright. So one thing you're going to notice just to start off with this is that it actually moves relatively decently. Like, they did a really good job of using the Game Boy's limited real estate in a way that ultimately works out. And on top of that, it moves far quicker than you would expect. A lot of fighting games had difficulties running at any sort of appreciable speed on the Game Boy, mostly because they would rely on large sprites. They would try to be as close to the original graphics of the arcade game as possible. Takara here decided to do something a little bit different, and instead they made more super deformed versions of these characters, which honestly I think goes a long way to helping out with the presentation of this game. Yeah, it looks surprisingly good all told. So, to get a little bit into Samurai Showdown. Ah, there we go. Got that victory. Haha! So, Samurai Showdown, once again, is based upon the arcade game of the same name. Samurai Showdown, also known as Samurai Spirits in Japan. It's a fighting game originally developed by SNK for their own proprietary Neo Geo MVS arcade system in 1993. Evie asks, is this a good game? Yes, I think it is so far. We'll see how I feel as we play a little bit more of it. Now, Samurai Showdown is a legendary fighting game. It's kind of known for its focus on weapons and getting powerful strikes off more so than combos or anything like that. Not to say that you couldn't do combos in this game, but it just really wasn't the focus. Now, unlike contemporaries like Street Fighter or Mortal Kombat, that were more combo focused, we just kind of rocked Charlotte that entire time. So, a couple of fun facts about Samurai Showdown. It was a very, very successful game when it came out. Let's give you an idea. In 1993, it was not the only legendary fighting game to come out that year. Virtua Fighter, one of the first 3D fighting games, and Mortal Kombat both made their debut that year. It's kind of an underrated year for video games when you think about it. I don't think a lot of people think of 1993 as a hard-hitting year for video games. Samurai Showdown was Electronic Gaming Monthly's Game of the Year. And I think the only fighting game that was their Game of the Year. I'm not sure. Maybe Street Fighter managed to do so. I'm not sure. Now, Samurai Showdown would go on to spawn a ton of sequels. This includes not only 4 numbered sequels, but also even a recent reboot that was released in 2019 that was well regarded. And there was also other weird games such as Samurai Showdown 64, which you would think was for the Nintendo 64, but you would be wrong. SNK actually released a Neo Geo 64 with 3D capabilities. That was a very short-lived system. Now, not surprising, a game this successful was bound to be ported everywhere. And you'll be happy to know that it was. Now, SNK at the time did have their own home console. This was the Neo Geo AES, or Advanced Entertainment System. Now, this wasn't going to be enough, though, to capitalize on the success of this game, and the reason being is because the AES wasn't exactly in a whole lot of homes. Mostly owing to the fact that the AES was essentially the Neo Geo MVS, their arcade system, just repackaged for home use. And in order to make sure that arcade owners wouldn't just buy the AES version of the game and modify it to run on the MVS, they were very costly games. The Advanced Entertainment System itself was about $650 at release, and each game retailed usually for around $200. So, as you can see, that's not exactly going to be something that a lot of people are going to buy. That's, in 1990s money, that's prohibitively expensive for a lot of people, I would say. So, instead, what happened is that SNK would develop numerous ports of their various arcade games, and then have other companies such as Takara go ahead and release them for them, to be the publisher. Oh geez, got stunned there. That's pretty bad. Just try to cheese this guy out. Well, that's what I get for playing around. So, Samurai Showdown was no exception to this. It was ported to a bunch of different things, and this includes the Super Nintendo, Sega Genesis, and Sega CD, like one would expect. All three versions being pretty decent at the end of the day. They also got ported to things like the FM Towns and the 3DO. And of course, they got portable versions for the Sega Game Gear and Nintendo's Game Boy, which is what we're playing right now. Now, what's very surprising about the Game Boy version is that, unlike the other versions which were developed by SNK, the Game Boy version was developed by Takara itself. Takara being a Japanese electronics and toy company. Now, this is a little bit of a surprise, considering they really aren't that well known for developing video games themselves. But it turns out that they were kind of wizards at programming for the Game Boy, particularly when it comes to fighting games. Now, how I want to explain this is actually using Samurai Showdown here. Now, for the various ports of Samurai Showdown, numerous things had to either be scaled back or cut to work properly on the Wii for home consoles. The Neo Geo was very, very powerful and very capable with the sprite capabilities. And just kind of everything that was just associated with that system was just better than what was on the home console market at the time. For instance, the Genesis version, which, is a pretty powerful system for the time, was cut down in the sense of the character Earthquake wasn't present. Earthquake is a character with a very large sprite, and instead of compromising the quality of the game, of the character, they just decided to cut him entirely. Earthquake, for instance, is in the Super Nintendo version, but the Super Nintendo version also just runs a little bit slower. Now, the Game Boy version manages to keep Earthquake in its own special way, of course, by kind of scaling him down. They keep all the characters, pretty much all the moves, with a few exceptions, and a lot of the weird nuances that were present in the arcade game. So, in the arcade game, you would have a referee who would signal when you would successfully land hits and whatnot. The referee's present. He's up there in the health bar up there, kind of still indicating what characters are doing what. We got absolutely wrecked by Hanzo here. Absolutely wrecked. Yeah. So yeah, once again, most of the special moves are present. Like, cutscenes and other presentation elements are altered, but otherwise present. There's even actually a secret code that allows you to play as not only the boss characters, but the referee himself. As well as there's a person who throws you items randomly. He's also present as a playable character, which is not present in the other home versions. So this actually contains more characters than the Super Nintendo and Genesis versions, which is kind of nuts when you think about it. Equally as nuts is the fact that Hanzo is just wrecking me. Ooh, you thought you could escape, Hanzo. Now, this isn't to say that this is the definitive version of play by any means. It isn't. For one, obviously, they had to compromise on the graphics and music in order to, even get this to work on the Game Boy in the first place. And so there's also just some limitations that, even if the Game Boy had infinite amount of power, they could not overcome. One way to demonstrate this is the fact that the Game Boy is a 2-button system. You have an A button, you have a B button, you have start and select. So, that's a problem because Samurai Showdown is a 4-button title. You have a light attack, a medium attack, a heavy attack, and a kick. So, that's not something you can overcome, unfortunately. They attempt to do so in some interesting ways. You press A and B together, for instance, to do heavy attack. And there are other ways to unleash some of the other special attacks by doing just directional input and then press a button, whether it's A or B. But it's still not perfect. Ooh, boy. Oh, boy, Hanzo. Hanzo decided to just give me the business, apparently, this time. So yeah, once again, the art style has also been changed. In a way that's not quite a chibi art style, but certainly more stylized to fit on the Game Boy. I think it's a very, very smart change. Like, I think it's an unquestionably smart change, and it ends up working well for the game. This game also has sort of like finishing moves in blood that are also removed, but I suspect that's more due to the fact that this is on a portable that was kind of considered family-friendly. And Nintendo would not have been particularly pleased with essentially fatalities occurring on the Game Boy. It's certainly not a limitation of the Game Boy itself. Samurai Showdown 3, which is also going to come to the Game Boy, will possess these elements. So, despite all of this, it's a fast-playing and smooth fighting game for the Game Boy. And when we play such hot bangers such as Street Fighter 2 and Mortal Kombat for the Game Boy, this will seem next to impossible for the portable. Now, Takara is going to have... Oh, God. Takara is going to have considerable success with, like, making various fighting games. Usually SNK ports, like King of Fighters and whatnot. And we'll be doing, like, just a ridiculously good job with them. So we're going to be seeing more of Takara's handiwork as we go on. And honestly, I'm very much looking forward to them, because this is a very good game. Like, this plays shockingly well, given everything is going on. All the limitations the Game Boy has. #127 Crazy says, here's some devastating Game Boy trivia I just learned. Faceball 2000's Fable 16-player mode is not possible in the release version due to link cable limitations, and only exists in unrealized in the game's code. Is that so? I did not know that. Faceball 2000 is a very interesting first-person shooter for the Game Boy that, it's gonna be a few weeks before we end up playing that, but it's a very, very cool multiplayer game. I always forget that you can run in this. Oh, we're at Wanfu. Yeah, no, this game obviously isn't perfect. There is definitely slowdown here and there as it tries to do things that, you know, Game Boy's not the most possible. Yeah, Faceball 2000 is one of the rare Game Boy games that's more than 2 players. You have to get a special link cable for it, if I remember correctly. It's pretty amazing. Impressive that they could theoretically pull off 16. At least theoretically. #127 Crazy says, this game looks good, by the way. Yes, it does. Yeah, this, once again, this game does have Super Game Boy compatibility with it. And it's pretty like, it's not the most impressive looking. Like, the music is not particularly enhanced or anything like that. It just gets, like, some extra colors to the screen, essentially. It allows you to play just multiplayer just using 2 controllers and one cartridge. A lot of fighting games for the Game Boy will have that feature, where you could just insert it into the Super Game Boy and, you know, pull that off, which is really, really nice. Wanfu is a surprisingly aggressive person. Surprisingly aggressive combatant here. I've always loved Samurai Showdown. I've never been particularly good at it, so I'm actually kind of surprised I'm doing as well here. Although, oof, he just has a good anti-air right there. There's nothing else to say about it. We just need a... Ow! Ooh, that hitbox lingers, too. Oof. There we go. Got knocked out. That's unfortunate. Let's play a few more matches before we get into anything else. Yeah, the Game Boy definitely is not known for their fighting games, I will say. Really, when you think of like good portable fighting games, unsurprisingly, you think of the Neo Geo, like the Neo Geo Pocket specifically, which is a very, very capable little handheld in itself with a very interesting history. Even once the more powerful Game Boy Color comes out, there's not really a whole lot of good fighting games that come out for it, with potentially the Crawfish Interactive developed Street Fighter Alpha, which even then it's really more impressive with what they were able to pull off rather than it actually being a good game. Street Fighter Alpha is a little bit too technical of a game to pull off on a 2-button system. In fact, when it comes to like consistently good fighting games, well, I mean, you can probably make an argument that the Game Boy actually does have them, but if it's not the Game Boy, then you actually have to kind of wait until the Game Boy Advance. You get some surprisingly decent ports of the King of Fighters games, and an actually kind of amazing version of Street Fighter Alpha 3, despite the fact that that's a 6-button game, and there's only 4 buttons for the Game Boy. I think Wanfu might be where we're, this might be the wall that we're gonna run into. Ah! Ooh, I like how he could kind of just pull him back. Oh, the power meter down there, by the way, I might as well explain that. The power meter, you get more powerful once it gets full. Your attacks will do extra damage. And I forget if it's this Samurai Showdown or if it's just later Samurai Showdowns. Then you'll also be able to use Desperation attacks as well. Wormscan says, I own the GBA Street Fighter Alpha 3 game. That's a wonderful game to own. It is absolutely great. If I ever do this series for the Game Boy Advance, I will be very much looking forward to playing that. Alright. I want to see if we can't get past Wanfu. The Disney mechanics in this game are quite odd, too. I don't completely understand them. Because it seems to be more than just, like, landing a succession of hits at once. Oof. See. It seems to be when you have a full power meter, if you just get, like, a devastating attack on you, you're just done. Yeah, Wanfu just has a good anti-air, turns out. Oof. Well, perhaps that should call it for Samurai Showdown. Let's go ahead and move on to our next game. And it's going to be a game that's unfortunately not as good as this one. And that's going to be Dragonheart. I'm happy to say that today, actually, we're going to probably be playing more good games than bad games. And this is probably going to be the worst game we're going to be playing of the lot. Dragonheart, developed by Taurus Games and published by Acclaim in 1996. Acclaim, whenever that's on the title screen, you usually know you're in for, well, good? A good time? This is based upon the movie of the same name, which was also released in 1996. Dragonheart is a first-person adventure game with a side-scrolling battle mode. When I was doing my testing, I didn't realize that this little preamble actually existed, kind of giving you a rundown of the movie's plot, which is rather nice. Here's some nice stills from the movie, done up in nice 4-color glory for you. One fun thing about the Super Game Boy is that you're able to alter the 4 individual shades, and you can make them any color you want. Which means things like this you can make look very, very garish and ugly very quickly. If you try hard enough. So yeah, as this story is telling you, it's basically tells a story of a knight by the name of Sir Bowen, who's played by Dennis Quaid, a dragon slayer who tasks himself with defeating the evil King Ian. I think that's how you pronounce his name. It might be Ian. He teams up with the last remaining dragon, whose name is Draco. Draco is voiced by Sean Connery, by the way. And the story goes that he secretly gave half of his heart to Prince Ian, who later became king after he was mortally wounded, in order to save his life, but it corrupted him, made him evil. And now Sir Bowen has vowed to hunt and kill all dragons, because he thinks it's the dragon's fault for this, which technically true. And eventually that shifts to him trying to stop the king alongside Draco. It was an alright movie and a moderate success back in 1996. And fun fact, Liam Neeson was actually supposed to play the role of Sir Bowen, but he was dropped at the last minute because they didn't believe he could play an action hero. So this is used as a password system. Tempted to turn that music off, but we won't. Let's play the first level. Dragon Trouble. Some trouble with those dragons. So yeah, first-person game. I guess you could technically call this a first-person maze game, in some ways. You're just sort of thrust into the world. You can run into some nice peasants who are walking around. What do you have here? A gallant knight trampling over my turnips. Oops, sorry. Have any dragons troubled these parts? Alright. Apparently there's a dragon to murder. But first, let's go to town. And, make ourselves known. This is not the town. That's just a... That is just a cabin that we cannot enter. The fun start to Dragonheart is actually trying to find where the heck you're supposed to go. You can press select to go over and select different options here. Unfortunately, I don't think I have a map, so I cannot select map. Real unfortunate. Also, I could just presume that's the dragon that's behind us. Now, our goal is to find the village. Mostly because I want to show you this, let's call it very good battle system. As well as actually, kind of try to advance through this. Dragonheart is honestly kind of amazing in the sense that it somehow is a game that runs at, like, very, very slowly, despite the fact that it's a first-person maze game. Alright, the tavern! Alright, let's talk to this weary soldier right here. Oh, he doesn't like dragon slayers. That's a real problem. For him. Alright, so here's the combat. If you think this seems bad, that's because it is. You can adjust your attacks high or low. And you can also block using the B button. Alright. So we got our mission. We have to go to the mines and rescue some people. Alright. These jolly people bought us a drink. That's awfully nice. Alright, I'm looking for a way through the forest. Alright, it looks like we need to get a new sword before we can do anything else. So we're gonna go to the blacksmith. And see if... Oh no, we gotta get money now. in order to sharpen our sword. Can you see where this is going? It's kind of an adventure game almost. In its structure and whatnot. It's I'm not sure if this is really that bad of a game, but I personally would not have been a fan of this back in the day. And I'm not sure if I'm a particularly big fan of this either. Alright, what about this large cottage? Hi! Nothing going on there. What about this old shack? Greetings, my friend! Oh, bye, my friend. Oh no, he's looking for a turnip. I wonder if we get a turnip, we'll be able to, in order to give it to her, get some money, and then be able to sharpen our sword. That'd be really fortunate, wouldn't it? So once again, this is another hot licensed game from Acclaim. And Acclaim was kind of the masters of publishing shovelware in the 90s, such as this, as they slowly made their rise to one of the biggest video game publishers in North America. Now, Acclaim would go out of business in 2004 because once you become one of the biggest publishers in North America, that's kind of more of a curse, if more than anything else. That happens, you're probably not long for the world. The developer they chose for this game, though, Taurus Games, would considerably outlive them. Alright, we got our turnip, by the way. So I want to talk about good old Taurus Games a little bit, because they have a bit of an interesting history. Taurus Games is a Melbourne, Australia-based video game company. That's family-owned. That was first started in 1994. Alright, before we go on, let's give this... wrong one. Let's give this lady her turn up real quick. I don't think it actually did anything for us. Unless the blacksmith now is like, sure. Well, oh well. So Taurus Games got their start with licensed games for handheld consoles, such as their first game, which was Stargate, for the Game Gear. It was also coincidentally their only Game Gear game, so, went well for them, I guess. Now, this was published by Acclaim, and Taurus would have a pretty close relationship with Acclaim through their early years. In fact, of the 6 Game Boy games they're going to develop, 4 of those are going to ultimately end up being published by Acclaim. Now, unlike other companies with development deals with Acclaim, they weren't owned by them. In fact, from what I can tell, Acclaim never had any sort of stake in them at all. This is a little abnormal at the time. Very much so for Acclaim, who around this time was very heavily acquiring third-party studios. That was just kind of their MO in many ways. I collected something and I'm not really sure. To give you some examples, Acclaim would, got a hold of LJN in, I believe, 1991, and would go on later to acquire Iguana Studios. Or Iguana Entertainment, I should say. My apologies. What this meant is that Taurus Games had quite a bit of freedom, though, to develop games for and have, make deals with whoever they saw fit. Which they often did. Now, to give you an example, over a 5-year period between 1997 and 2001, they would release games that would be published by Acclaim, THQ, a company called New Kid Co., SCI, which would later be owned by Square Enix, Midway, Mattel, Activision, and Ubisoft. So yeah, quite a few companies. That's what, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. 8 different companies. Now all these would be like licensed titles or ports of other existing franchises. But it goes to show how prolific and well known they were to the various publishing labels out there. Now, for the longest time, handhelds were going to be their bread and butter. But they would move on to making some seriously impressive games for the Game Boy Advance. At least on the technical level. Whether or not they're good games is another question. Maybe he'll like my weird 4-leaf clover. Oh no. Okay, hold on. Ah, come underneath your stick. Looks like he doesn't have anything else to say, unfortunately. Let's talk to these jolly pests again. So yes, they developed quite a few games for the Game Boy Advance. Now, giving an example of some of these technically impressive games that they made, they ported Doom 2, and even made an original Duke Nukem game, albeit one that heavily resembled Duke Nukem 3D. So they're responsible for some of the few first-person shooters that were going to be on the Game Boy Advance, which is kind of nuts. The version of Doom 2 that got released is actually not that bad of a version, albeit one that controls absolutely terribly because, well, you know, there's only so much you can do with the Game Boy's control schemes, unfortunately. But still, it just goes to show that, you know, when they put their minds to it, they can do some pretty good work. Now, from there, Taurus Games would expand its home console development scene, making games for the major consoles including the Nintendo Wii, Xbox 360, and the like. Now, while they are still heavily focused on licensed games, they did eventually finally get around to making their own wholly original title in 2010. A game called Kid Adventures Sky Captain, which was like a Pilotwings-like flying game for the Nintendo Wii. I don't know much about this game, other than it was conceived by Kevin McIntosh's mother. Once again, Kevin McIntosh, him and his family owned Taurus Games, which is, it's kind of cool, I guess. To this day, Taurus Games still exist, and they're still putting out licensed games. Although it's definitely a slowing down for them. The last game they developed was an HD remaster of an old Eidos game called Praetorians in 2020. But from what I understand, they still have various products in development right now. So, kinda neat. Unlike this game where I'm just now completely lost. I feel like I've talked to everybody. Let's take a look at our inventory really quick. Oh, we actually... that was a map we found. Oh. Oh, this is great. Would you like to play this game without actually having to get completely lost? Well, you can. Who wants to guess the old man's through there? Yeah, I'm not entirely certain Dragonheart's a good game. This feels like one of those games where you basically spend your entire time talking to everybody multiple times. And just kinda hope that eventually you end up, you know, stumbling upon the right solution. Like, that level of adventure game. So I don't know how much more we're gonna really play of this one. It does seem relatively ambitious for the gameplay, I'll say that much. Like, this doesn't seem like, to me, like the ideal, like, pick up and play sort of game. Like, it feels like something more akin that you would see in, like, the early days of DOS for the PC. Talk to the weary soldier again. Oh. I thought we got along. Let's talk to the blacksmiths one more time. Nope, we still need 2 silver pennies, unfortunately. Yeah. We're gonna go talk to the crazy man one more time. Nah, it seems he just wants me to go away, unfortunately. How about we go ahead and move on to our next game. And it's another licensed title, but it's one that I think is far, far better. And that's The Little Mermaid. Developed by Capcom and published by Capcom. This is our first Capcom game we're playing on the stream. One of many. A company that is, during this era, synonymous with quality. So, based heavily upon the Nintendo Entertainment System game of the same name, which was also developed and published by Capcom, and based upon it, the animated feature of the same name released in 1989. As you can see, it gives you just a short little overview of the story. Sebastian, Flounder, and Scuttle came to see Ariel in a big hurry. They explained that Ursula had to cast a spell over the fish in the sea so that they would have to do what she wanted. If she wasn't stopped, she would probably take over the whole sea. Probably. No guarantee. Ariel decided to go to Ursula's castle to try and release the fish from Ursula's spell. She explained to Eric that she was a mermaid and a princess of the sea and that she must try to save her friends. Eric, who's very confused in this picture, tried to convince her not to go, but she turned back into a mermaid, dove into the sea, and began to swim towards Ursula's castle. Though it doesn't quite follow the story of the movie. So, this game is fantastic. Starting with, you move in, let's say 8 directions. You actually are able to power yourself up with items you can find in the game. Get extra power to your bubble attack and range. It has some Chip and Dale's Rescue Rangers sort of elements where you can grab items and throw them. And in fact, that's kind of your primary thing. There's also like a Bubble Bobble element where you trap enemies in bubbles and can mess them up. There's also a lot of secret items that are around. Okay, you can throw up. I thought you could throw down, but perhaps you can't. I mean, I guess Ariel's always throwing down, but you know what I mean. Alright, I do want to get one of those fish, because if I remember correctly, there's something hidden down here. There is not. Okay, well, whatever. So, yeah. This is a game that was released 3 years after the release of Little Mermaid in 1989. Now, this might seem a little weird and just, well, let's be honest, a little late to capitalize on, I guess we could say, Little Mermaid fever. Boy, oh boy. I wanted to grab that fish so I can toss him into that corner and get an item, but it wasn't quite working out there. Yeah, so it might seem a little bit odd this game was released 3 years afterwards, but The Little Mermaid was kind of a cultural phenomenon at the time. It still kind of is to this day. Disney's The Little Mermaid was, and in still some ways, was a smash hit for the company, Disney. And is oftentimes cited as the start of what was called the Disney Renaissance. The Disney Renaissance being a 10-year period where Disney's animated features, and just movie studios in general, ended up basically releasing movies of just like profound quality and profound profitability as well. There we go, extra heart. And these include such animated movies such as Beauty and the Beast, to this date the first and only animated movie nominated for Best Picture Oscar. Aladdin, The Lion King, and arguably ending with either Mulan or Tarzan. Kind of depends on how you feel about Tarzan overall. Now, this movie was a resounding success for Disney when it came out. It had a budget of about $40 million, and it earned roughly about $235 million, so did very, very well for them, to say the least. Oof. Controls are a little stiff in this game, by the way. Not exactly the most responsive. So it was only natural that because this game was so successful, this movie was so successful, it was going to have a lot of merchandise with it. And this, of course, was going to include video games. Now, during this time, Disney worked with a variety of different video game development companies in order to bring their licensed properties to life. And this includes like a very, very wide variety of companies, like such as Nintendo, Kemco, and Tomy, just to name a few. But for this game, they decided to go with Capcom. Now, I really did not expect this to be our first Capcom game to play, and in fact, I had completely blanked that they released The Little Mermaid for the Game Boy. But it is, and it honestly is arguably one of their worst Nintendo Entertainment System or Game Boy games. Which, to be fair, if this is one of their worst, that will honestly say a lot of things about some of the games we're going to play, because this is still a very good video game overall. Now, Capcom is a company that needs no introduction, I feel like, but I'm gonna go ahead and give you all one anyways. Now, in short, they're a Japanese third-party company that got their start in arcades before transitioning to home consoles. Now, they started that transition roughly about 1986-1987 with games such as Mega Man, and they found considerable success. Considerable enough that they basically started to expand their business and put out just tons and tons of quality games every year. The late 80s and early 90s are probably the height of Capcom's video game making prowess. And they were just seemingly capable of doing no wrong. I guess I need a more powerful bubble to knock that over, unfortunately. We do not have a more powerful bubble. That's unfortunate. I wonder if we can use this to knock it over. Nope, we can't. So, just can't do that, unfortunately. That's too bad. So yeah, they were seemingly capable of doing no wrong. And it makes sense given that this was the era of games such as Mega Man, Final Fight, and Street Fighter. Like, just to name a few series. And, of course, they would go on to make games such as Resident Evil and are still making quality games to this day. So, unsurprising that Disney decided to go with them. There we go. Got a more powerful bubble again. Now, one part of Disney that's really... My oh my. One part of Capcom that's really underappreciated, or at least in my opinion it's unappreciated, are their Disney games. There we go. Let's get up there. Oh no! I can't knock it over. Okay, there we go. Now, their Disney games are some of the highest quality games out there. Now, they would make quite a few like movie adaptations for Disney, not only The Little Mermaid, but games like Aladdin. Come on, kick that up, kick that up. There we go. Controls here are just a little finicky compared to the NES version, I must say. So yeah, Little Mermaid and Aladdin would not only have like Capcom versions released for Nintendo consoles, and in fact, by fun fact, these particular movie franchises would have Sega games released, but made by different companies. But they would also like make games based upon the Saturday morning cartoon block that that Disney had. And this would include games such as Darkwing Duck and DuckTales, games that are considered classics for the Nintendo Entertainment System. They would also do like just general Disney related stuff, such as the Magical Quest trilogy starring Mickey Mouse that were all on the NES, or Super Nintendo I should say. Tried to bubble him. Completely failed. Now, these games were, for the most part, all-time greats. And stuff such as, like Magical Quest are some of my favorite games growing up. Absolutely, absolutely love them. And, in fact, you have to just kind of try hard to find a Game Boy game, or I should say a Capcom game released that was bad. Oof, you gotta hit him an awful lot here. So, it would be easier to actually, like, talk about the different games that weren't good. Games such as Mickey Mousecapades, for instance. One of their first actual console games they released back in 1987 for the Nintendo Entertainment System. Now, all good things, unfortunately, do have to come to an end. And this is the same for Capcom's collaboration with Disney. In the mid-90s, Disney realized that they could make quite a bit of money off of video games. And they decided to shift the vast majority of their development in-house. So games such as, like, The Lion King, for instance, while they would still be technically developed by, like, certain third parties, they would retain, like, far, far stricter control, for instance. And because of that, companies like Capcom wouldn't be developing far less games for them. Now, this doesn't say that Capcom's collaboration with Disney completely stopped. It's just that by the time they started doing it again, it ended up being games that were not exactly... Well, they didn't exactly set the world on fire. For instance, Magical Tetris Challenge for the Nintendo 64. You know, it's a Tetris game, kind of hard to make it bad, but I don't think anybody is going to sit here and say it's their favorite Capcom Disney game of all time. Say nothing of something like Disney's Hide and Seek for the PlayStation 2. Now, all of this leads us back to The Little Mermaid. The Little Mermaid is, I believe, the 6th Disney title that Capcom made. And while I do find it more simple than, say, like DuckTales, it's still a pretty interesting game. It seems to share, like, some similarities to Chip 'n Dale's Rescue Rangers, with just the way you, like, grab items and throw them, and use that to defeat your enemies. Very Chip 'n Dale sort of setup. And it makes me wonder if it was actually developed by the same internal team. Unfortunately, I was not able to find any information on that. Not a whole lot of write-ups on the Capcom-made Little Mermaid out there, it seems. Now, what's very strange about this is that while a lot of Capcom... They call them ports. We'll call them ports, just to make it simple. Ports of, like, different Capcom properties, such as, like, Mega Man and whatnot. When they came out for the Game Boy, they would actually be pretty darn different overall. Like, when we play Mega Man for the Game Boy, it's gonna be a very, very different game than from what you would expect. Okay, we messed that up. Let's just respawn that. This, on the other hand, though, seems to be, at least for the first couple of stages, a pretty close approximation. That was very useful. A very, very close approximation to the NES version. The level designs are slightly different to accommodate for the smaller screen of the Game Boy. But it's not as radically different as you would expect. I certainly expected it to be far, far different. So, kind of interesting. And I will say that the controls are a little bit more stiff and unresponsive compared to the NES version. The NES version, by the way, came out in 1991. 1 year before this. Don't have enough power to knock that over, unfortunately. So, I do find that this is a bit of an inferior game in some ways. But it's not too terrible. Like, you could definitely find better Game Boy games that Capcom has made. But it's one that I could see myself having a fun afternoon. By the way, the darker orbs are for power. The lighter orbs are for range. And boy, we are just getting no luck. Ah. Bummer. Bummer on that. 127 Crazy says, in the insert time frame, Disney realized they could make quite a bit of money off of insert thing. Yeah. It's one of those things that it almost feels like I didn't even have to say. But I chose to. I chose to anyways. So unfortunately, when you die, you do lose all of your power-ups. Which, given that the small real estate of the screen and the stiff controls is very, very punishing, all told. I don't know why I did that. Oh well, that actually worked out. Yeah, it's alright. It's gonna work out. I think that's gonna be a game over for us. So, how about we use this opportunity to move on to our final game? And that is going to be... And Monsters. Some might say the only good Kid Icarus game. And a kind of pseudo-sequel to the original Kid Icarus. Goddess Palutena, the ruler of Angel Land, had a vivid dream of the evil force invading her beautiful world. She called a valiant warrior, Pit, and sent him into a program of intense training for the upcoming attack. Pit now must find the 3 secret treasures hidden in Angel Land. Be brave, Pit. Your long mission is just beginning. That is a quick scroll. Very quick scroll. So, it's a game with a battery backup save. It is developed by Nintendo R&D1, Gunpei Yukoi's studio, and Tosei as well, who assisted. Published by Nintendo. We actually have an exact release date for this one. It was released on November 5th, 1991. Now, it has a very similar structure to the original Kid Icarus for the Nintendo Entertainment System. The difference being that it's much, much, much more user-friendly. In this game, you play as Pit, our little angel buddy here, as you try to rescue the goddess Palutena and defeat the demon Orcos. You do so by recovering 3 relics: the wings of Pegasus, the silver arrow, the silver armor, and the light arrows from various fortresses, while battling demons of the underworld, such as those snakes and these snakes. As mentioned, Myths and Monsters is a interesting follow-up to the original Kid Icarus. Kid Icarus being released, I believe, in 1987? Don't quote me on that. Ouch. Okay, let's just get down here and start shooting up until we defeat enough of these stupid bats. Now, it's a pretty interesting follow-up in the sense that it plays less like a true sequel and more of like a refinement of the original game. There's nothing going on here that the original Kid Icarus didn't really do already. But it does seem like they took the opportunity to fix and, paper over many of the warts that the original Kid Icarus had. To start with, Kid Icarus, at least in the first stage, was a vertical scrolling game, and you could not fall down. The screen was locked in the sense of like you would scroll up but would not scroll down. Here, that's not the case. You can fall all the way down. Whatever. In fact, let's go ahead and do that right now. See? Not a problem. So, much, much harder to fall to your death in this game, which is nice. The game is slowed down quite a bit, and the controls are just a little bit more refined. That makes it less likely you're just going to accidentally run into enemies and just get absolutely, absolutely wrecked, which is nice. Let's get these hammers. And you have different moves now to help compensate for, to help Pit move around. For instance, you can rapidly hit A to now hover, which is nice. It's not really much of a hover, but it is a hover. See if we get lucky with this. So far, so good. Second, we guessed wrong. There we go. Can't unlock any more of them. So yeah, you have all these interesting new moves and whatnot that end up helping to really, really compensate and help out with the difficulty of this game. Make it a lot more bearable than the original Kid Icarus. A game whose first stage is incredibly tough, and then it continues to be tough as you just play through it. Buy an additional hammer. Now, on top of all of that, this is a game that has battery backup saves. For those of you who are not aware, the original Kid Icarus did not have that. Or at least not in the version that came to North America. This game was... Kid Icarus on the Nintendo Entertainment System was actually for the Famicom Disk System. The Famicom Disk System being a add-on for the original Nintendo Entertainment System that allowed you to use floppy disks, and you could overwrite data on there in order to save your game. That wasn't available when this game came over to North America, so instead it used a 24-character password system that was, let's call it cumbersome at best. Because unfortunately, and it needed to be that long in order to compensate for all the different items you can get. Values such as how many hearts you had, how many hammers, what was your overall health, so on and so forth. So it made sense why I had that long password system, but it was kind of terrible, and it was very, very easy to mess up writing that down, and then just have an unusable password. You have to start over again. So Myth and Monsters was developed by a combo team of Nintendo R&D 1, as well as Tosei. So Tosei is an interesting company in the sense that they are a well-known and unfortunately much ignored and uncredited third-party, or really, yeah, third-party, I'd say. Third-party developer for Nintendo. They're often working on various Nintendo projects. In fact, they'll help out with various Nintendo development projects to this day, but will often go uncredited. Now, it's unknown why exactly they have such a close collaboration, but they do have some staff that are literally situated in Nintendo's Kyoto office, their main headquarters. So that probably does help contribute quite a bit to it. Essentially, if you want to think about how Tosei's relationship with Nintendo is, their relationship is similar to that of Game Freak. Oh hey, look who it is! It's our favorite Grim Reaper buddy. See you later, Grim Reaper. Jeez, that sucks. In the sense that Game Freak does primarily develop the Pokemon games for them. But then they'll also do other projects on the side. Like, such as, was it Teebo the Badass Elephant. So, Kid Icarus itself is one of Nintendo's weirder franchises. And it just has it's really kind of captured the imagination of US audiences in a way that I think other games haven't. Or at least has like an outsized importance, it feels like. Now, the reason why I say this is because, first off, this is a game that was on Electronic Gaming Monthly's, one of the largest North American video game magazines in... Ooh, got one of the special things. Nice. Or I think we just got upgrade arrows, never mind. Yeah, Electronic Gaming Monthly, one of the largest enthusiast magazines. They actually rated this as their 34th greatest game of all time in 1997. Which is crazy. Absolutely crazy, but... Or not this game, Kid Icarus for the Nintendo Entertainment System. So yeah, people just, in the United States, just seem to like this game, and a lot of people did own it. Like, it sold very, very well. Just north of 1 million copies. So it did see only natural that this game would get a sequel. But what's very strange about the sequel... good question! Oh god. No, I can't. I think it's a little weird that the angel turns into an angel. So when this game was developed and released, it's very strange in the sense that it actually never came out in Japan. This was only released in North American and PAL territories. In fact, it would not get an official release in Japan until 2012 as part of the 3DS Virtual Console. So, this is kind of like this really strange thing where this is just a gem of a game that Japanese audiences weren't able to experience until much, much later. Something that you normally see with North American and European audiences, as opposed to Japanese audiences. But hey, they got to experience what we had to experience. For a hidden door above the stage's entrance. Oh, let's try to find that. Because I think we still have hammers. We do. So yeah, interesting little fact that. Alright, let's go ahead and get down here. I want to see if we can't find that door. Alright, so it must be up there. Hey, we found it. What is going on here? I'm very, very confused. Hopefully that's still open. It is, but we can't go into it now. Darn. I think that's where one of the sacred treasures is, unfortunately, but we messed up. So the original Kid Icarus for the Nintendo Entertainment System has kind of an interesting development history behind it. And by interesting, I mean it sounds kind of like hell. So initially this game started out with a development team that was very, very small, just consisted of a small subset of R&D 1. This is because another game was in development at the same time, that game being Metroid. Now, Metroid was developed on a similar game engine, which is why when it came over to the United States, they both used like the similar like password system and whatnot. They kind of have some similar ideas about like expanded inventory and whatnot, upgrades you can find. Now, initially it was of course made for the Famicom Disk System, but when it came over here, they chose to release it on cartridge instead. But before they could get to that, they actually had to finish the game. And once Metroid was done with its development, a lot of the development team from there shifted over to work on Kid Icarus. We're about to die. This is bad. Now, while the game was being developed initially, it actually had a far more serious tone to it. But once team members from Metroid, such as Yoshio Sakamoto, joined up, they basically convinced the Kid Icarus team to make it a lot more lighthearted and kind of weirder in general. They include things like a wizard who could turn you into an eggplant, who himself was also an eggplant. Stuff like that. Game over. That's unfortunate. Start again. They also place really weird, anachronistic, and just other out-of-place items. Like you can get a credit card, for instance, in the original Kid Icarus, and other stuff like that. And just had a bunch of weird ideas that just kept throwing in there, in order to just make it this incredibly weird title for the Nintendo Entertainment System. Now, this game was slated to be released in 1987, And unfortunately, they needed to, like, they had a pretty strict release date. And so they were falling behind. And they did what any Japanese developing team does when they start to fall behind. They basically underwent a ton of crunch in order to make sure this project got through. One particularly depressing story I found was how the team members talked about how they made makeshift beds out of cardboard boxes and slept in the studio. Now, the studio, by the way, was not heated at night. And it was late fall, early winter while this was all going on. So in order to essentially survive, they would pull down the curtains from the windows and whatnot and use them as makeshift blankets in order to stay warm. It is the saddest sounding thing. And a lot of the developers from the time talk about how it was a good experience and a real character building moment, which is like, it doesn't have to be. It really doesn't have to be. It's, a very sad and depressing thing, as you can imagine. So, at the end of the day, though, they did get everything done, and they did get released on time. And once again, it sold well over 1 million copies. Now, past this and the Game Boy game that we're playing today, Kid Icarus did sort of die out a little bit. However, it did get a small reboot in the 2010s when Matsuhiro Sakurai, the creator of Kirby, decided to take on a Kid Icarus project and revive it with Kid Icarus Uprising. A game that actually ignores this game as far as canon is concerned. And just takes place as a direct sequel after the original. It's a game that's relatively well regarded, although quite a few people... I am extraordinarily lost. Yeah, it's a game that ended up being pretty well regarded, if albeit a game that also had maybe one of the worst control schemes I've ever seen. It does not control particularly well, in my opinion. But yeah, that's Kid Icarus. Pretty good game. This is, I definitely think, a better version of Kid Icarus and a very, very good refinement. Still decently tough, and I don't know how I'm just so extraordinarily lost. Oh, maybe because that's the end of the stage and I'm an idiot. I thought it was a locked door. Oh boy, that's embarrassing. Oh, interesting. And everything crashed. Well, you know what? Perhaps that's the best. Perhaps that's just an indication that this is where we should stop for the day. Well, I think today we ended up having a good selection of games. This is probably the first time where the majority of the games were good. We ended up playing 3 good games. It appears the emulator crashed, so it did not like the fact that we beat Kid Icarus. So that's okay. These things happen. So yeah, today we ended up playing 4 games. We played Samurai Showdown, our first fighting game on the system, and a very good game. Honestly, one that I heavily recommend. We follow that up with Dragonheart, an acclaimed published game that, well, it's an interesting adventure game. Don't know if I would recommend it. Interesting example of using a first-person maze game, though, to an interesting effect. The Little Mermaid, our first Capcom game, and arguably one of their worst, which is to say it's still a good game, so we have plenty to look forward to. And, of course, Kid Icarus of Myths and Monsters, a very good refinement of the original Kid Icarus. So next week, what we're going to end up playing is we're going to have, honestly, a selection of games that I have no idea how good or bad they're going to be. We're going to be playing Go Go Tank, Soccer Mania, Cliffhanger, our prerequisite license game, because there are way too many on the Game Boy. And then we'll finish it up with Contra, the Alien Wars, a somewhat ill-advised attempt to port a Super Nintendo game a classic Super Nintendo game at that, to the Game Boy. But that's going to be for next time, everyone. I do appreciate you all joining us. You can find other episodes on my YouTube page. I do upload them 1 week after their original recording. And last week's episode should be up by tomorrow. So if you want to check out previous episodes, you should definitely go there and check them out. I like the series. I feel like I'm doing some good work, and hopefully y'all will enjoy them. And of course, we're going to be back tomorrow with another stream as we play a weird remake of Mega Man 7 that somebody developed in 2007. But I'm going to go ahead and sign off now. It's sunny outside for the first time today, and I probably should take the dog out for a walk. Take care, everybody.